Welcome to our new class. We are the Eternal Vedic Science group, and today we're going to talk about India and the secret history of civilization. We are going to show history from a different point of view, from a different angle, completely different than what we learn in schools and universities in the West. We always think that the last bestseller will change our lives, right? People go to library shops, to bibliotheques, looking to find an information. I remember I used to do that. Opening a book and trying to get the answers of the existence in the first page or in the middle page, or doing the 400 or 4,000 pages of an encyclopedia or something like that. But it did never work, at least not for me, until I got in contact with the first manuscripts of mankind. So what about a deep dive into the first books of humanity? In our class, we analyze different cultures of humanity in relation to the original Oriental philosophy, which is based on the Vedic manuscripts, as we explained in the past two classes, the scientific proof of God's existence and science and astrology. Today we are going to talk more about the profound mysteries of ancient India. To begin, we are going to pronounce this gratitude invocation, a mantra that proves our dedication and our gratitude for those who kept these secrets, this invariable, amazing information safe through time and history. So, Om Ajnanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tajmai Shri Gurave Namaha. We explained in the other class that the meaning of this mantra, and we are not going to explain it today again. While science investigates the elements that construct our universe, it fails to answer why the universe exists. In contrast, Vedic literature explains the world behind the material illusion and gives us clear answers to existential inquiries, such as what is the meaning of life? What is this planet? How can we understand God? The first important thing that surprised me when I started studying the Indian manuscripts is that ethics are linked with the universe and nature, and it cannot change according to our personal beliefs. In the West, we think, oh, I think this way, this is my truth, this is your truth. But this makes the behavior of society become unequalized. Nobody can say what's wrong and what is right. People are used to comment on our Vedic classes, oh, there is no right or wrong. Yes, we can learn through all kinds of experiences. But if someone comes here and poison our tea, is it going to be right or wrong? We need to have a parameter and some constructive rules to expect good things in society to happen. Anyway, ethics in Sanskrit could be identified with a very special word, acharan, behavior. So what is ethics? Ethics is the way people behave. You cannot say that ethics is something only philosophical, a list of rules that regards morals. Practical ethics is the way people behave to each other, the way you give class, the way you sit down to listen, the way you talk to your parents, the way you talk to your son. This is ethics. And this is what spiritual life tried to improve according to the original manuscripts of India. That's what determines our understanding of reality. So ethics is the synthesis of values that guides human action. You can see, you can map someone's ethics through his behavior. A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj used to say that there is no anartha that stays invisible in someone's behavior. It means that every dark part inside your understanding, your conscience, will show up in the way you talk, in the way you move, in the way you interact. You cannot hide the dark points of your chakras, the dark points of your conscience. So, ethics are demonstrated by a person's behavior in their relationship in society. Here is Henry David Thoreau saying something very interesting. He said that the Hebrew and Christian religion and philosophy look like the mythology of a wild and rude tribe that imitates civility and the intellectual refinements of Vedic culture. So today we're going to see also the history of the Bible, the history of other religions through the Vedic point of view. So I'm calling here this witness to testify and to give another opinion about this kind of knowledge, the knowledge that we are presenting today. At many universities, programs on the history of the East are scarce. They are usually part of specialization courses. The University of São Paulo, the city that I took birth in this lifetime, for example, offers an elective program on the history of Asia relating to Russia. There is nothing that gives us history of India in the most important university of the whole South America. The mysteries of India, they don't belong to only one culture, they belong to our existence. The mysteries of India are the mysteries of life. So, as we said, where did we come from? What's the meaning of existence? What is this reality? Why are we here? What is happiness? Why do we suffer? Where does knowledge come from? Why are we so different from each other? Why does evil exist? This is very interesting, and the Vedic literature explains that too. And we're going to talk about that, if not in this class, in future classes. And what is God? So there is a corridor behind the Western academical point of view, leading us to another reality, historical reality, and we're going to analyze some pieces of it now. So India is the country that has secretly most influenced the world until now. The word Veda means knowledge. So as we explained, all the knowledge regarding all science are all contained in these beautiful manuscripts. But people ask, why is India facing so many material difficulties if all the knowledge appeared there? We are going to answer to that too in this class. So, to synthesize, we need to remember you that these books, these manuscripts, were written more than 5,000 years ago. So, the Indian classical literature is the oldest and the most complete knowledge in the human civilization. They were transcribed into written Sanskrit by the incomparable philosopher Vyasadeva. The manifestation of sound, as we said in last class, created space and geometry. So, why do we need to understand that? Because there is an order to all sciences. So, the first thing we need to study, for example, if you want to understand the universe in order, you can also get into other doors. But you have to understand that sound created space and geometry. And from geometry came the concept of mathematics. For example, from this point to here I consider it to be the first measure, so 1. From here to here we have 3. And from here to here we have 6. And from here to here we have 7. And from here to here we have 15, for example. So, looking to geometry, you can understand mathematics. Looking to sound, because sound is propagated by sound waves, so it moves in geometrical ways, with geometrical waves, you can understand geometry. If you make mathematics move, you have physics. When physics get inside material reality, you have chemistry. From chemistry, you can go inside biology. Inside biology, you can go inside physiology to understand how our body is working, right? So, and then you have medicines, Ayurveda, all the studies about the body. And then from that you can go to sociology, and then to art, and then to history, politics, philosophy, that will bring us back to the sound of the words. A philosopher is always speaking and he's teaching us through his words, right? So this process leads us back to the absolute, the source of the Omkar, which is creating the atom, as we saw in the last class. So this is an example of the relationship between sound and geometry. These patterns are made with nothing but sound. They are called Chladni patterns, after a German physicist who used his violin bow to vibrate a metal plate with sand on it, creating these beautiful forms. And I need to say to you that the Eternal Vedic Science Group is a study group formed by many philosophers, journalists, monks, architects, scientists, and students like me. And we are not here presenting personal opinions. Our classes are only based on the facts, on the topics of the most ancient scriptures in the world, as we said in the beginning. And we're not changing and obeying fashion or modern points of view. So we're talking about the common source of all philosophies. The Vedas unveil and reconnect philosophies and religions. So Greek, Celtic philosophy, Taoism, Christianity, Buddhism, Spiritism, etc. all have their roots within the Vedic culture. This, for example, is a list of all technology described back in the Vedas and the time they were found by the Western science. So all these books already existed in the form that we can read them today more than 5,000 years ago. And this is the century where they found out the speed of light, which was already mentioned in the Rig Veda. Or for example, nuclear energy in the 20th century, it was already in the Mundaka Upanishad and in the Mahabharata. So we can trace back all Western discoveries inside the Indian original manuscripts. For example, something interesting, people are always scared of the symbol, the swastika used by the infamous German leader. Actually, the mystery behind it is not only people say the rotation is a problem, but the question is not what it meant. It didn't mean to be wrong. It was like an auspicious symbol. Here it's used by Coca-Cola to launch the drink. Here is used by these young ladies who find maybe a beautiful boyfriend or to go on university. Here is used by the Windsor cricket team to attain victory. So it's very curious that today we are forbidden to use a symbol that, according to the first manuscripts of the world, would bring us joy, happiness, and victory, right? And here it's pictures of its roots in the Vedic civilization. You can see Lord Ganesh, here the door of the temple, and other manifestations of the Oriental tradition. More than 5,000 years ago, the Vedas said that the Earth was 4.5 billion years old. So, during the last 2 centuries, Western scientists have claimed that the Earth was 70,000 years old. In 1905, they theorized it could be 2 billion years old. In the last couple of decades, they finally concluded that the Earth was 4.5 billion years. This is the same number that the Vedic literature says the age of the world is. Here is Professor A. Holmes, a geologist at the University of Durham, that wrote, long before it became a scientific aspiration to estimate the age of the Earth, elaborate systems of the world chronology had been devised by the sages of antiquity. The most remarkable of all is that of the ancient Hindus, whose astonishing concept of the Earth's duration has been traced back to Manusmriti, a sacred book. So, another key that we need to understand for history, to understand where the Western civilization came from and why is it so different from the original civilization. Because if we all descend from Indian civilization, how come the West is so different? So, in the West, it is believed that Mesopotamians and Parsis would have given rise to our civilization. But in the Vedic manuscripts, we discover that Bhagavan Parashuram fought 21 clans who were rebels against Vedic ethics. These clans escaped from India and founded an anti-Vedic civilization. The Babylon civilization, Assyria, Sumerian, Phoenicia, Egypt, Persia, and so on, until what we are today. Because Europe was based on these civilizations. From Egypt, Greece came. From Greece, Roman Empire came. And from Roman Empire, Europe as we know it today. And South America, North America, Australia, they all are connected to this same root. The fact that Bhagavan Parashuram expelled people from ancient India thousands of years ago, and they founded the West. So the Vedas explain also the different deities of these dissidents of the original ethical cultures that used to adore the Nagas, as we can study in the history books. Egypt is a step forward outside the Vedic civilization, and we can see this same culture adoring the flying snakes that are described in the Vedas as the Asuras. Okay, here we can see that the Vedic architect of the pyramids was wearing the mark that belongs to the Vedic Vaishnav culture. You can see it right here in his forehead, in his arms, and his belly chakra. That Imhotep was a Vaishnav. He was using the same marks that Vaishnavas use until today. And this fact leaves no doubt about the Vedic origin of the mysterious architect. So the pyramids were built according to the Vedic method, and we are going to explain it now. So how do you build a pyramid? The method is given in the Vedic scriptures. You have to use amplification instruments, amplify sound, placing amplification instruments around blocks of stone, while Sanskrit mantras are chanted for hours until the vibration level of the atoms of the rocks enter into resonance with a special music produced by the monks, with a special chanting. At that point, the rocks become totally equalized and lose their specific weight. They can be more easily pushed or pulled and transported that way. So why do you need Sanskrit mantras to penetrate the atoms in a stone? Because the first material syllable of Sanskrit, the Omkar, the famous Om, is inside the atom. So when you speak in Sanskrit, you are not facing the gap that all the other languages face in between language and matter. People in the West, Western philosophy is lost in a specific point. When in the mid-20th century they found out that our words couldn't touch reality. When I say chair, I can never touch the chair. So when they reached the conclusion that man's language is like a phenomenon inside man's mind that can never reach reality. So philosophy in the West collapsed because nobody could say what was right, what was wrong, if everything is a phantomatic idea inside our mind. But the difference with Sanskrit is that Sanskrit is able to touch reality because the structure of sound of Sanskrit is connected to the atom by principle. Because the same universe that produces mathematics, that produces physics, is also producing language. And the language is inscribed in the atoms that we're going to see in a future class. Now we're going to go back to the pyramid. So the original amplification instruments were similar to the horns that Tibetans still use to invoke and glorify the Nagas up today. And for those who do not believe that you can use sound to levitate objects, this is a proof made in Japan. Japanese scientists proved that acoustic levitation is possible. They have levitated a piece of gold and they can use to manipulate water and other substance too. So according to the manuscripts, to the Vedic manuscripts, the process involves, of course, calculations, geometric angles, many specially trained monks, and it takes hours. But at a certain point, the vibration of the atoms inside the stone start to variate and they become lighter. And this is the way we can clean behind our refrigerator too. If you chant mantras and you can make your refrigerator levitate, if you're skilled enough to do that. Columbus was looking for another route to India. So surprisingly, the discovery of the three Americas is also connected to ancient India. European kings knew about the Vedic Empire as it had been their source of precious goods. The attempt to reach the Indian continent was the main impetus for the great maritime voyages. Thinking that they had reached India, the indigenous people living on what would later be named America were called Indians. In Brazil, in North America, and in Central America too. So they were trying to come to where we are right now. We are giving this class from the state of West Bengal in India, in the district of Nadia. So we were told that they were looking for spices, right? They used to build those huge boats, the galleons, that used to cost so much that the European courts used to fight the king not to build them because they were so costly that the treasurer could not afford that. Just to bring pepper, cloves, and cinnamon from India. Okay, people do crazy things for eating good stuff, it's true. But was that the only reason? So in 1497, Vasco da Gama's successful trip gave Portugal the status of a respectable empire in the West. They had reached South America and they had successfully gone into India, and they became a very powerful nation in front of the whole European civilization. Now we're going to take a look at the spiritual concepts that we see for the first time inside the Vedas. For example, chakras, prana, spirit and soul, physical and subtle bodies, the law of karma, the eternal dharma, reincarnation, samsara, the cycle of lives a soul goes through, mantras and prayers for happiness, protection, prosperity, knowledge, connection. We will talk about that in the future classes. The existence of saints, wise people, gurus and teachers, geometry and mandalas, the yantras, the creation of the material universe, other planets, quantum mechanics, philosophy, ethics and morals, control of emotions, how to not to be angry with the people you love. It's something that we need to learn, right? The spiritual world, the illusion of Maya, the so-called matrix, enlightenment, and the very concept of God are all introduced to humankind by the extraordinary Vedic literature. So everything people are discussing right now in the planet came to us through the first literature. Why should we look to other books? Why should we buy new bestsellers if we can take a look? And I'm offering myself to be your guide, at least in the first moment, inside this marvelous, extraordinary philosophy. It is necessary to remember that the Vedas combine science with spirituality. In Vedic culture, God is connected to the atom. As we explained in the last class, there are clear descriptions of the atoms inside the Bhagavad Purana. Matter, antimatter, protons, neutrons, etc. are all different effects of the Supersoul, Paramatma feature of the Supreme Lord. It's written on the Bhagavata Purana. So, another thing that we need to understand, the Vedas talk about a single God. People say, oh, but the Hindus, they believe in millions of gods. It's not exactly like that. The Puranas do not talk about many gods, as it's commonly believed, even in India. The manuscripts describe one unique power, one God that controls reality through the media of different intelligent agents, different intelligence forces and laws. So for someone who's starting right now, we could explain the demigods, the army, the arms of the Lord inside material reality, the arms of the Supreme Intelligence are as the personification of the laws of physics. There are equations, intelligent orders, there are functioning inside material reality, right? This is the first level of explanation, of course. So also Sanskrit is considered ideal for movement of the well-functioning of artificial intelligence, as this article and many others were published online talking about this. Vedic predictions and descriptions of the present as the future of human civilization, and maybe this will be the topic of next class, are so precise that it seems they were written 5 minutes ago. The Bhagavata Purana describes the development of the human fetus, even though it was only confirmed by modern technology about 50 years ago. So we had to be able to see through sound to find out in echography inside a pregnant woman's belly to confirm what the Vedic Shastra were telling us more than 5,000 years ago. And then we repeat now that this knowledge, before putting by writing, was reproduced by hearing from guru to disciple, so it was a verbal tradition. Shri Krishna Yadava, our classes will guide you to properly understand the Vedic texts and how to identify each character. Krishna, the avatar of the Absolute who manifested himself in the house of Yadava, is recognized by a peacock feather in his head. The demigoddess of knowledge. So to begin, let's start digging inside this culture and try to decode its symbols. Let's look at some images of the demigoddess of knowledge, Sarasvati Devi. Her invocation mantra is, and those who want can repeat with me, Om Shri Bij Sarasvatyai Namaha. So here she is represented in a beautiful bronze murti, in a beautiful bronze figure. And here we have a drawing. How did you like the bronze image? Let's test your sensibility. How did you react to such a colorful drawing, to this drawing? The Western eye generally catalogs everything with an aesthetic focus. Pretty and chic or ugly and tacky. Isn't it the way we mostly work in the first moment? We want to know if something is beautiful, if something is not beautiful. If something is elegant or not. This is the first level of the Western eye. To understand the original culture of India, we have to comprehend the deeper meaning of things. In the Vedic culture, art, ethics are most preeminent than aesthetics. We need to understand the value of things, the existential value of something, instead of saying this is ugly, this is not ugly. I like the bronze Sarasvati and I think this one is kind of tacky. This won't bring you anywhere because knowledge is beyond the surface, as we all know, right? So, made of gold or as a simple drawing, this image of divinity might seem unusual compared to images familiar to our culture. Okay. The demigoddess Sarasvati has 4 arms. Why? What does it mean? And she is sitting on a swan. We have images that represent concepts like redemption or justice in the West, right? It's difficult to explain that our justice is blindfolded to an Indian man, because probably he would say that justice should have 3 eyes instead of being blindfolded, right? And for example, why do the Indian gods have so many arms? Why do we see Vishnu with thousands of arms? We also talked a little in the past class about time and space. Let's understand that reality is very complex, and its supreme intelligence, according to the Vedas, has to manipulate every atom, has to manipulate every atmosphere, has to manipulate every number, everything that is going on in physics, everything that is going on in human mind. So how many arms does the infinite has? You see? So before saying I don't like it because I don't understand it, or before thinking it's mythology, we have to understand also the function of the divine structures proposed to us in the Vedic culture. Okay, the 4 arms of Sarasvati, they have different meanings. So one arm means the mind, another intelligence, the next the focus, chit, and the last one the ego. So this is very interesting because we have to understand. First time when I read that I said, oh okay, and then I turned the page. Then I came back, I said, wait, but what does it mean? I cannot go so fast. You know, this is one of the secrets of Vedic culture. You have to go step by step and realize what is the meaning of everything that you're doing and everything that you're studying. So what does it mean that she has 4 arms and one is mind and the other is intelligence? Well, the first meaning that can come to our conscience is that intelligence and mind are different things, which is something not clear for the Westerns. Until today, psychologists and doctors fight about the concept of mind and intelligence, and where is the individual and what is memory, while the Vedas have everything well catalogued for more than 5,000 years. So let's understand that we have these four arms that correspond to the four subtle layers of material existence, and we're going to explain this later. So the first one would be ego, and the second one intelligence, mind, and the gross body. These are the coverings of the soul, right? But the arms of Sarasvati Devi do not represent the gross body. They represent Chit. And Chit, as we know, is the unification of the three first levels. So you need to use your mind and your intelligence and your ego, because you have to have a personality, to focus. And when you focus in the right way, you can reach knowledge. We can learn to do that when we study the Bhagavad Gita. I hope we have time to study that one day. So there are two different things. So the mind, as Vedic knowledge explains, is a medium between the material world and the individual intelligence. It offers us different types of thoughts, feelings and desires. The mind is the editing machinery, the mixing table of our senses. What does it mean? That our thoughts, our emotions are produced by the material universe. Krishna is very clear, and those who watched the class Science and Astrology understood something about that. Planets are transmitting thoughts. So when we think, I don't believe this, and when I say, maybe I'm not going to go that way, or, oh yes, I need to do this, I'm being pushed by my mind. So when the Oriental people say, be careful, because you can be in your mind level, it means that you're obeying your own thoughts, your own emotions. People say, but I don't feel like. Why should I study the Vedas? Because I feel like studying something else, right? You need the help of intelligence. Intelligence is what can see that there is no other philosophy, for example, that is based on science. Why should you use your time with them, right? So you're going to use the arms of intelligence to manipulate the machine of thoughts, of emotions, of sensations. And you're going to pick, like one of those arms that in the playgrounds of children pick up the toys, choose one toy and bring it to the children that is playing, trying to do this in a game. That is what we should try to do with our intelligence. We should try to manipulate what mind offers us in order to achieve the truth, and not believe everything we think and feel. This is like a deep secret of Vedic knowledge. So intelligence is something separate. It's the decision center. When you listen to the radio of mind, and the radio of mind is made by thoughts, emotions, feelings, impressions, things that you can touch, things that you can taste, things that you can see, the sense objects talk to your mind. And those who are below the intelligence level, they just immediately feel, I like this. I don't like that, so I will push that away. I feel like shouting now. You have to listen to me. We're being played by the emotions transmitted by the planets, as we explained in the first class. So all these sensations need to be watched by intelligence. Intelligence needs to say, okay, if I behave like this again, if I follow the same pattern that I've been having on the years, I'm going to get the same result. So I'm looking into the wrong place. Let me throw this kind of feelings. They keep coming, right? We're going to talk about that in a class called the How to Control Emotions and Mind. But to start with, you need to understand that you have double level, and intelligence is going to choose inside the radio which song you're going to listen to, and you're not going to dance through your thoughts anymore, because that is being trapped in a mind level. And why is mind the enemy? For him who has conquered the mind is the best of friends. But one who has failed to do so, says Krishna, his mind will remain the greatest enemy. So it is not because you chant mantras that you are already out of influence of mind. Krishna himself is saying that. You have to use chitta to chant. And that's what the most beautiful Vedic philosopher I've ever met in my life, that I adore every moment that I speak and every moment that I breathe, taught me this. He said, you have to pronounce the mantras with your heart, with your throat, and with chit. Try to chant 2 rounds like this and see the result. Of course you have to chant as much as you can. Mantra means control of the mind. We're going to have a class on mantras. But for now, I'm talking a little bit for those who are already studying the Vedas. You have to really focus. Because without focus, you don't go anywhere. You cannot tame your own mind, and you're going to be calling something without attention. If I call you, if I say your name, but I turn my face and I say, Steve, or Andre, and I'm not looking to you, when you look to me after you heard your name, what do you think of me? Am I really calling you? Do I really want to talk to you? Is it possible? So the function of intelligence is to evaluate thoughts and impulses for each daily impasse. Lord Ram says, only the fool act without asking the opinion of the sages. So we are taught the opposite in the West. What is the first thought that came to your mind? Do that, right? That's what we are taught. But that's not the answer. That's the way to make a mistake. Because mind is going to cheat you. You need to know that the first thought is going to come to your mind. Might be good, might be bad. Evaluate it. This is the only way to go to the second level. Third level would be the soul, and fourth level would be the relation with Paramatma, with Shri Guru, right? As it's described in the 3rd chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Okay, so let's define ego. In the West, people oversimplify the idea of ego and wrongly equate it with our concept of arrogance. Yes, ahankar in Sanskrit also means arrogance, but why? When you act obeying your mind, when you act following your own wishes. The deep meaning of ego is the provisory personality of one lifetime. So the ego is John, Paul, Antonio, Anna, Sophia, Eve, Claudio. This is the ego. And all your feelings are part of the ego. All your thoughts are part of the ego. So if the ego is illusion, also your feelings and thoughts, they belong to the quantum biophysic mechanic machinery that you're connected with. Okay, the Vedic manuscripts explain this. So the individual, with all the material characteristics that our momentary personality possesses, our ego. So you cannot take it out. People say, okay, you have to get rid of your ego. The actual real saints, they say you have to bring your ego to knowledge of who he is. But you cannot get rid of your ego if you don't replace it with an eternal servant of knowledge, of Anitya Krishna Das, the way we say in Vaishnavism, right? Why? Because someone needs to be controlling something in order to grow. That's why ego is one of the arms of Sarasvati. So you have to use it and understand that you cannot get rid of it. It's not a shirt that you can take out. When you sleep as a man or a woman, and that's part of your ego. No, it's always with you, right? All we need to do is to tame it like a wild horse and make it go in the right direction. The Vedic manuscripts explain how to disable the false ego and neutralize pride. And we will see that in the classes of the Bhagavad Gita. So Sarasvati arms also represent the first 4 Vedas, Rig, Yajur, Sama, and Atharva. The objects on her hand has also meanings. And one of the meanings is the chanting of mantras. She's holding a mala, as you see over here in this image. So that's the way we can start controlling our minds. Let's see the Western archetype This is a portrait of Sylvie von Harden, which used to be considered the image of the European intellectual in the 20th century. Now, the author of the painting looked at her and said, I need to portray you in a painting. You represent our time. So, what is more strange? Sarasvati with her 4 mystical arms, or this very, how can I describe her? She looks to me, I don't want to judge anyone, not even Sylvie von Harden, who is an ego inside material reality that already went out of our history. But anyway, we can see that the use of alcohol, nicotine, she has an expression of dissatisfaction, that of arrogance, that is typical of the intellectuals of the West. If you're going to talk to an art critic, I used to work with that, or if you're going to talk in a university, the teachers have this face, they look at you with their glasses in their hand and they are about to say, why are you asking me questions? Right? Why should I get bothered by your ignorance? Or something like that. People would look down on God, look down on kindness. In Europe it's very common. It's elegant to be snob, which means to badly treat people you don't know, while kindness is the proper behavior that we should show to people who didn't make us any harm, isn't it? So, which model would we choose for our children? People laugh when I show this image, but I think it's sad. Why should we play? Why should children play with addiction? Instead of looking at Sarasvati and trying to decode her beautiful mystical figure. So the Vedas impel us to questions the devas, these demigods described in the manuscripts. Are they mythology, forces, laws of the universe? That's the meaning of this image in a way. These are like a graphic of phenomena in the cosmos. Soon we will see that we're going to reach this answer step by step. I hope to help you see what they say in the scriptures. So one thing that I would like to clarify before we go further is the meaning of the word namaste. In the West, it's believed to mean the divine who dwells in me acknowledges the divine who dwells in you. But the problem is, and we have Indians present here with us, that namaste comes from namaha astute, if I'm not wrong. Namaha means reverence, astute means unto you. So even if it's poetic, namaste does not mean what we translate it to be. It only means I pay obeisance, I recognize your importance, I reverence your existence. So in the same way, in the West, we are confusing Vedic symbols and meanings since we started to get in contact with Indian philosophy. Let's see something very interesting now. The Vedic culture is the first complete religion in the history of mankind, as we said, and analyzing its symbols, we can trace back and reveal many secrets of our civilization. In the image related to Lord Shiva, we find the waning moon as his distinctive symbol, as we can see in this picture. The 5-pointed star is the famous pentagram, is a specific symbol of Durga, Lord Shiva's wife. Durga literally means prison in Sanskrit, in the sense of the illusion of material reality. The Vedas explain that the pentagram symbolizes the 5 elements that create the cosmic temporary reality and their unbreakable connection. You cannot break the 5-pointed stars, right? You come from ether, air, fire, water, earth, ether, air, fire, water, earth, tum, 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 tum. You cannot break this design. It's not like the 6-pointed stars made by 2 triangles. They are transcendental one to each other, right? Parallel one to each other. This is the prison. It's the force camp. If you're going to create like energy field, not to make anyone trespass, this is the symbol of that energy field. And that's why it's so adored everywhere, because everyone wants to dominate the material illusion. That's why it's on all the flags, all the banknotes of all countries. So, to obtain the favor of Maya, of the illusion, it is present everywhere, as we said. So, In the Sanskrit language, I'm not here to offend anyone, I'm just tracing history and the history of language. The word Allah, Akka, and Amba are synonyms. They mean goddess or mother. The term Allah forms part of the Sanskrit chants that invoke the goddess Durga, also known as Bhavani, Chandi, etc. The Islamic word for God is therefore not an innovation from the Vedic point of view, I repeat it, I don't want to offend anyone, but an ancient Sanskrit name for Durga. For example, here we can see in this flag, the flag that symbolizes many Islamic countries, the symbol of Lord Shiv and the symbol of Durga present together. Is it a coincidence that the holy day of Muslims is Friday and that the same holy day of Lord Shiv is Friday? Durga Puja happens in the same period of Muharram or Eid festival, a major Muslim festivity. It is a historical fact that Muhammad's uncles and relatives were monks, they were pujaris at Vedic temples. Because before the prophets knew preaching, Arabia was part of Vedic culture. And we have to say that God does not depend on the capital of a country. There is only one God. Some create competition between gods, even in India. Brahma, Shiv, Vishnu, Krishna. But this is not a high level of understanding. Everything comes from the power of the infinite. According to the Vedas, different names correspond to functions, to different functions and qualities of the same God. There is a specific spiritual hierarchy, according to Vedic manuscripts, of functions, of powers, that we can understand through study and that leads society to harmony, without any need to bend the infinite with human ideas and conceptions related to unnecessary speculation. So the Vedas are the backdrop for the Old Testament. I wouldn't say exactly the backdrop. Let's say that the Vedas are behind every spiritual book in material reality. The Bible itself has a Vedic root. In 19th century, Max Mueller and other scholars identified the biblical city of Opir with Abir at the mouth of the Indus River in Pakistan. The different spelling of Opir and Abir is due to the Hebrew pronunciation. It's easy, it happens. If you pronounce the name of someone in the south of a country or in the north of a country, sometimes depending on the culture, the name changes pronunciation. Every 3 years, ships used to be sent to Abir to buy jewels, spices, and rare objects. So Mueller was a famous Orientalist and mythologist, as well as the author of the 51-volume The Holy Books of East. He initiated the discipline of comparative religion in the West. He claimed Solomon, the famous biblical king, was a Yadava king. He also said peacocks were brought to Jerusalem by King Solomon's fleet from the kingdom of Opir, Abir, in India. It's written in the Bible. Originally, peacocks were found only in India. The representation of peacocks in Solomon's paintings confirmed his love for these birds, as well as their presence in sacred temples. The use of peacocks as a sacred bird comes from Krishna's predilection for such birds. Krishna belonged to the Yadava dynasty, the same dynasty according to which Solomon was descending from, according to Max Mueller. So that's why they used to say they descend from God. That doesn't mean, ladies and gentlemen, that the Bible that we read today, or the Bible that was written at that time, was a pure copy of Vedic knowledge. Because it was written in Babylon, as we explained already before. Babylon was already a kingdom founded in opposition of Vedic traditions and ethics. But anyway, we can trace back echoes from Vedic knowledge inside any other philosophy. So Krishna is recognized in the Vedic art and culture by wearing a peacock feather in his head. God's name has 3 syllables. In the Bible, the name of the Jewish Christian God is Yahweh. or Yod Ge Va Ge, like someone tried to teach me to pronounce. But Yahweh has 2 syllables. In English we say Jehovah. According to the Torah and the Bible, the name of God has 3 syllables. The Vedas and the Bhagavad Gita say that one of Lord Krishna's name is Yadava, 3 syllables. Whoever understands the process of transformation of the pronunciation of words can understand that Yadava, Krishna, over the centuries started to be pronounced Yadve. Later the name morphed into Yadve and finally became Yahweh, the famous biblical tetragram. So Yod Ge Vav Ge is an attempt to make Yahweh sound 3 syllables. But originally, the name of God in the Bible comes from Yadava, Krishna Yadava. The English poet and writer Arthur White has stated in his book, The Sacred Kabbalah, that the Kabbalah, the mystical book of Judaism, is deeply rooted in the Vedas. The word Kabbalah has a Sanskrit root, Kabul, that means obedience to God. We all know this figure as the Star of David. It came to our knowledge maybe through Hebrew culture 3,500 years ago, but the same exact star appeared more than 5,000 years ago in the ancient sacred texts of India. Its original design is more complex, as we see in this figure. It fits the golden ratio, so it's the basis of what we call today in the West the sacred geometry, and the basis of quantum physics, because this design that we see here can move inside cosmos and forms the structure of the space-time that we studied in the last class. Its original name was the Krishna Yantra. Yantras and mandalas are a type of Vedic knowledge related to geometry and formation of space-time, as we said. They are found within various cultures and science, such as Buddhism, which, as few know, itself derives from the Vedic tradition. So, the difference between the Buddhist and the Vedic tradition is the same difference between Catholics and Protestants. The Vedic is the original. There was a political fight, and the Buddhists took some books and part of the knowledge and created something new, excluding some topics. One of them, the existence of a source to reality, existence of an intelligence at the root of the material manifestation. The Sanskrit is the source of all languages, and we can comprehend that, for example, analyzing the word calendar that is present in many languages. It comes from the Sanskrit kala andar, counting time. Kala in Sanskrit is time. But the most interesting word is mother. The word mother comes from the Latin mater and is at the root of mother, muta, matrix, matrix, mother, machi, mashka, mitir, mom, mãe, mère, mom, mamma, etc. But the Latin root mother is derived from the Sanskrit mata, which is commonly the first word uttered by human babies. So when in 99.9999% countries of material reality, when a child starts to speak, he's connecting himself indirectly to Sanskrit roots. And this is a very important word for a baby. It's the first time where the baby identifies someone else. He's saying, in the beginning, the mother, the universe himself is the same thing, but at that moment, he's saying, you, mother, universe, goddess, you're giving me life, you're giving me food, you're giving me love. This is a very important word, and it's going to come back again in a very complex topic right now. For example, in the West, people call the material illusion, I don't know if Indians heard that, but they call it matrix because of a famous Hollywood movie. So the material illusion is called matrix. But you have to answer me, how can you get rid of the illusion by calling it mother, matrix, mama? Is this a coincidence that in the West we call illusion mother and the Indians refer to the illusion as Mother Durga? You see, everything comes from the Vedic knowledge, but we need to have eyes to see that. Krishna talks about the seers of the truth. You need to realize that there is no different culture. There is the original culture, and there is the, how can I say, the action of time inside this culture. We all know that there is a law, the second law of thermodynamics, that proves that everything that is material, and culture is a material phenomena, deteriorates inside time. So language changes from the original language to a first language, to a second language, to a fourth language, and in the same way, our feelings, our thoughts, our philosophy changes and walks away from the original meanings, from the original language. Maya, this illusory power of mind, which consists of the three modes of the material nature, is very difficult to be transposed. But those who surrender to me can easily overcome it, says Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 7, verse 14. To better understand the three modes of nature, please watch our lecture called Science and Astrology. Let's go back to history for a moment. The discovery of a new route to India was the reason for the great navigations, as we mentioned before. Columbus had heard of India from the accounts of Marco Polo, the first European to travel throughout Asia. And let's see what Marco Polo said. I have described not even half of what I have seen because no one would believe me. The Venetian Marco Polo wrote in his famous diary, Il Milione, the first book in Romance language of the European pre-Renaissance era, that the region of India known as Malabar is the noblest and richest country in the entire world. We are talking about the 14th century. So 6 or 7 centuries ago, 6.5 centuries ago, we have a testimony that India was the richest country in the entire world. And let's relook to Indian dressing. We think the English, when they came here, they used to mock on the Indians and say that they were wearing diapers. But those cloths, the dhotis and the saris, are the basis of all the fashion in ancient time to all countries. The Greek and the Romans used to wear the same beautiful cloths wrapped around their bodies, just like Indian woman or an Indian traditional man wears today. Once I heard a prince in Europe saying that, he said, my idea of elegance would not be pants and shirts, would be a beautiful cloth with a beautiful fabric wrapped around my body. And he said it after he came to India in a trip. So the beautiful cuts of cloths are nothing but versions of Indian saris and dhotis that were present in Rome and Greece. The Indian style would be beautiful in a temple of 10,000 years ago and will still be beautiful in the remote future. Marco Polo describes the king's jewels. The king has necklaces with dozens of diamonds, sapphires and emeralds. Also he wears on the chest a thread of silk with over 100 giant pearls and very expensive rubies. He used 3 golden bracelets studded with stones of immense value, stunning anklets and rings on all toes. What he dresses every day, said Marco Polo, considering gold, stones and pearls, is worth more than the treasure of one of our European cities. So when we hear that India was the center of the world, we have proof of that. When we say that, we have proof of that, that even 600 years ago, it was still like this. We're going to understand what happened now. Before that, we're going to check this point. After the contact with India, and up until the 18th century, a sign of prestige for American companies was to have an office in India. Renowned for much more than just spices, India was also rich in other goods, including fabrics, golds, jewelry, technology. Preeminent among these treasures were the literary works that the British and the Americans used to call the Sanskrit Bibles, the incomparable Vedas that we are trying to decode right now. So let's give you a chronology of the history of religions according to the Vedic point of view. We're not giving a chronology of civilizations. We're giving a chronology of organized philosophies. Okay? Philosophies, sometimes they come after the beginning of certain civilization. So we start with the Vedas. They call themselves the eternal philosophy. The Brahmanism, the Hinduism, they all belong to the Vedas. The most impressive ethical point, ethical stream inside Vedic knowledge is what is called the Vaishnavism. It's the diamond peak of its knowledge. The Zoroastrianism appeared in Persia around 4,500 years ago. I didn't put a year for the Vedic culture because we need to dig into that to understand how it manifests inside material reality. Mesopotamian and Egyptian mythology, 4,000 years ago approximately. These are the most commonly believed years, data. There are people that goes far way behind these numbers. But most school books until today have these numbers right here. The devotional Buddhism, 3,500 years ago, then Judaism, Greek Roman paganism, Taoism, Theravada Buddhism, the Buddhism that says that there is no God. Christianity is 1,985 years approximately, so it's very recent. Islamism is 1,396 years ago. The Advaita Vedanta that is so popular all over the world is not the original Vedic knowledge. It's 1,218 years, more or less. Then we have the other religions. I also put it the Marxism, atheism, as a form of religion because the atheism is being taught to people as a system of belief, right? So it has to be named here. The Spiritism, 161 years. Theosophy, the famous Theosophy, 143 years. The Beat Generation and psychotropics, it's almost a kind of religion to many people. It has only 63 years. New Age and Neo-Shamanism has 45 years. The point is that if we are really falling inside eternity, the way Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Goswami Maharaj says, and if the law of entropy really exists inside material reality and civilization is a material phenomenon, we have to understand that we are coming from a better conception to a worse conception. We are falling inside the stairs of time. And it's a law, like it's something related to an equation. It's proved that everything material goes to a more organized to a less organized state. Nothing can escape a physical law. Nothing inside the universe can escape a physical law. And civilization, society is a material phenomena. It's not a transcendental phenomena. It's not like a perfume that is going in the air, but even perfume, if you open the bottle, throw it in a cushion, after some days it's going to be gone. It's not spiritual. Society is not spiritual. Society is a material phenomenon, so it obeys this law. And that's why we come from golden age to iron age. Golden is better than iron, right? So we are decaying. So I'm not attacking anyone, I'm just saying that we lost contact with the original philosophy through time. And this is the sequence of our walking, falling inside eternity. And don't think, some people think that shamanism was way behind time. Well, India did not went through shamanism at any point, but shamanism is related to Indian Tantra festivals and yagyas, actually. It's not the opposite. Let's not talk about Tantra, because Tantra has two different meanings in the West. Usually it means something very complex. They call Tantra like sexual activity with many people chanting mantras and doing common massage to each other. In India, it means manipulating reality through mantras, in a synthetic word. But in Kali Yuga, in the age that we are now, it should be forbidden. It's very difficult, and it requires an immense level of conscience and culture and responsibility to manipulate reality in that way. So we should be careful before putting our finger in things that we don't really study before. That's my advice. That's the advice of our study group to all of you. Okay, so from gold to iron, we are following, inside time, following the second law of thermodynamics. So we talked about that in last class, as some of you remembered. Also, we talked about the first university of the world in Takshashila during the same class, the scientific proof of God existence. The Aryan invasion is a hoax. So something that we need to know when we go into research Vedic culture, we bump into the Aryan invasion, a theory saying that Vedic knowledge came to India through Mesopotamia. But that's exactly the opposite of what happened according to the manuscripts. I wonder why. Do you? So, the war described in the Mahabharata actually happened. This is something very interesting to know. And Narahari Achar, an Indian physicist and a professor of the University of Memphis, proved it or determined that the battle narrated in the Bhagavad Gita occurred approximately 5,000 years ago. But there are other researchers with other numbers too. The interesting thing is that we have archaeological data proving the existence of the battle. And here we go into politics a little bit further. According to historians, up until the 16th century, an Indian public servant earned more in gold than the King of England. But in the 17th century, members of the Rothschild family landed on the port of Bengal and established the East India Company. From that moment, the prosperity and spiritual knowledge of India became increasingly undermined. And let's see how. And it's interesting that even our consumerism of today wouldn't be happening without the Industrial Revolution that happened in England. And the Industrial Revolution wouldn't happen without Vedic technology. So the Vedas are also the source of the wealth of the West. The English used to come here, buy Sanskrit Bibles, bring them to England and start building the things that were described in the manuscripts. That's how they created the steam engine, an Indian project based on the Indian manuscripts. And that is what turned the world upside down until today. That's the beginning of the big change of our history. And today, nowadays, people think that we have to buy things, that buying things we're going to be happy. But the Vedic knowledge says that no material thing can make you happy if you cannot find happiness inside your relation with the infinite, your relation with the absolute, as we're going to see in the future. Please don't perceive eternal Vedic science as a group with political motives. We believe that all political angles are fallible and create dissension in society. We limit ourselves to analyzing the social cloth from a philosophical point of view with the aim of helping society as a whole. Following the proper role of a teacher or philosopher, we simply point to reliable and time-proven solutions. The New York Herald Tribune published in 1853 an article by Karl Marx about the immense economical effects of the East Indian Company. So my point is not saying that the left wing or the right wing is right. It's just saying that everyone had to acknowledge the revolution coming from the wealth that was taken out of India from European countries. Max Mueller, we talked about him in the beginning of the class, he was among the first Vedantists. He was paid by the British to poorly translate the Vedas. Mueller stated that the Vedas were pure savagery and that the Indians should be reconquered. Later on, he changed completely his mind. And he wrote to his wife while he was paid the equivalent of today's £3,000 per page. Whoever made a translation work, I did translations of books in the past, and I would be really, really glad to receive £3,000 per pages. I can translate 3 or 4 pages per day. I would be gaining £12,000 per day, which in 10 days would be £120,000. In 30 days, £360,000 in a month. He wrote to his wife, "I'm convinced that this translation of the Vedas will erode the destiny of India and the evolution of millions of souls. It will ruin the millenary tradition connected to the scriptures." As I told you, at an older age, Mueller regretted and recognized that India was the source of knowledge as a whole. So let's see the first philosophical step outside India. The first people to invade India were the Persians, who, according to historians, were not foreigners, but ex-Indians, former Indian clans that had abandoned the original Vedic rites and philosophy, and that came back. And this is very interesting. The tribes that founded Persia fell from the Vedic consciousness because they offended the Brahmanas. This would be the karmic cause of their conversion to Zoroastrianism, says Swami Narasingh. Zoroaster, the founder of this first new philosophy out of Vedic context, of Vedic culture, was brother of the famous Vaishishta Muni. And he was expelled from Vedic society due to intoxication and philosophical speculation. As he couldn't preach, he couldn't find disciples in India, he remembered the tribes that were kicked out of Bharatvarsh by Parashuram, took his elephant and went west and invented the first diversion to the original philosophy. I'm not trying to offend anyone, I'm just telling history through the Vedic point of view. The opinions of Zoroaster or Zarathustra were diametrically opposed to Vedic knowledge. This is to be considered a milestone in the present age of Kali Yuga, in the present Iron Age. Why? Zoroaster stated that God and evil were separate entities, but that both had descended from the same God, Ahura Mazda, or Mazda Ahura in Farsi. In Sanskrit, Maha Ashur. Indian origins of Zoroastrians or Parsis is something that you can research online. What Zoroaster did was changing positions between the Vedic gods and the Vedic demons, saying that God's name was Maha Ashur. Ashur in Sanskrit means demon. So he simply changed names of the entities that should be adored and kept many things at the same time. You say, but which is the damage of changing a name? For those who understand Vedic knowledge, the name is very important. We are here to learn how to speak, how to pronounce Vedic mantras, and how to connect ourselves to eternal knowledge. That's the meaning of life, one of the most important meanings of life. So words are very important. They determine the destiny of a nation. For example, what is that proves that a man is rich? Words signed in papers. The documents that prove that a man is owner of a building, or owner of a bank account, or owner of bitcoins, anything, are words. That's why the Vaishnavas always repeat us that we have to pay attention to the way we speak and the way we pronounce the mantras. So, from a historically linguistic point of view, and with due respect of all religions, the demons, the Ashuras of Vedic Empire became the gods of Zoroastrianism. Zoroaster and Zarathustra are the same person. And this is why, in the famous book by Nietzsche, also sprach Zarathustra, Zarathustra said that God is dead. It's the echo of the actual real Zarathustra, Zoroaster, in time. that Nietzsche is repeating inside the phenomena of culture, the phenomena of Western culture. He is echoing something that was made in the past, in a deeper way, in a very specific way. New Delhi means new heart in Farsi, in Persi language. So when they took the capital of India, they called it the new heart. Do you get the game of words? So what is New Delhi? New Delhi is Indraprastha. It's not Hastinapur, it's Indraprastha historically. So taking Indraprastha and calling it new heart in Farsi is a way of attacking the heart, the philosophical heart of the original civilization. Politics, in fact, are the practical aspects of a philosophical idea, of a philosophical chess game. Because that's what is happening here. According to Bhakti Rakshakshidhara Maharaj, the Supreme Intelligence is staging a theater, and every movement has a philosophical meaning. That's why Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakur Prabhupada used to say that at every second of our lives we're being spiritually tested, because our actions have a philosophical meaning, a philosophical result for every word we say. It doesn't matter if people are conscient or not of these actions, of the philosophical meanings of what are they doing. The theater is happening anyway. And it's telling us a deep spiritual story. The story of mankind falling inside time. According to Bhaktivinoda Thakura, Zarathustra's ideal influenced the Hebrew religion, and it is the base of the Quran. Christian religion comes from Hebrew religion, and all of them come from Zarathustra's idea. So, who are we in the West? We are, ladies and gentlemen, the sons of the anti-Vedic empire, of an anti-Vedic civilization that lost trace of the source of actual real scientific and spiritual knowledge. Sanskrit is the first language of the world. All languages going from left to right stem from Sanskrit. We all write from left to right, from Radha to Krishna, from Shakti to Shaktiman, right? And I have a question. When we reverse the writing direction of a language, do we subliminally oppose ourselves to the course of its philosophical logic? So Hastinapur is the present Meerut, and New Delhi is the famous Indraprastha described in the Mahabharata. The battle of Kurukshetra, described in the Mahabharata, changed the configuration of the ancient world. Within its episodes rests every possible configuration of world political expression today. If you want to understand what's happening today, you need to understand what happened then, and who lost, and who's taking revenge of what and why. The Vedas describe the use of different weapons. Among these, the Brahmastra, a nuclear warhead activated by mantras that triggers the division of the atom. Well, if we can regulate the atomic weight of a stone, mantras can also affect, because everything is sound. We saw it already in the second class, in the scientific proof of God existence. Everything is sound. We're walking on solid omkars. The folding of the om is creating the atoms, right? As we saw in the first class. So, sound. What is the first thing that you hear when a bomb explodes? That sound is bursting the atoms that are made by sound. Atoms are made of electromagnetic energy. Electromagnetic energy is equal, in a cultural way of speaking, not in a scientific way of speaking, to sound. It's a vibration. It's a magnetic vibration. So if you can break it with atoms, or if you can break it with words, or if you can break it with energy, energy is sound. And that's the reason why the man who made the first atomic bomb in the West quoted the Bhagavad Gita when the bomb exploded in the early 40s. So the epic Ramayana mentioned flying objects, crafts, flying saucers and airplanes, called Vimanas. The text described a Vimana with a circular double deck, observation cabins, and a dome at the top. It's the motors that make these machines fly are also explained in Vedic Shastra. I don't know if we're going to have time to see it in a class in the future. So the Vedas present plans for the construction of several types of Vimanas, some small and others as big as flying cities. And this, for example, is the Shakuna Vimana, who served as a model for NASA's propelled rockets. Why don't we know all of this? This is the answer. This class is the answer. But why India? People say, why India? People ask me this all the time. Why couldn't it be Belgium? Why couldn't it be France? Why couldn't it be Brazil? Why couldn't it be Cuba? Why couldn't it be North America? Or Ireland? England? Why all knowledge, all science, and all avatars appeared in India and not somewhere else? And why do some places in India appear so chaotic today, if the Vedas possess all answers? One possible answer could be that civilization had to start somewhere. But geography explains it better, and we're going to understand why. In a house, there is a place for cooking and another different place for sleeping. Nobody sleeps in the kitchen, unless the house is really, really small. There is a separate place for cleaning our bodies. Our material world is similarly divided by regions that have different functions. Some countries are known for their advanced technology. Others gain fame for their extraordinary cuisine. Others have karmic tendency to organize fun festivals and parties, as Brazil, where I was born, in this lifetime at least. India is the homeland of spirituality, and its chaotic atmosphere is a mirror effect of the spiritual derailment of humanity. The more men miss spiritual understanding, the more India gets chaotic. Because India is the stage where spirituality is resolved in our material world. This is the same thing. The same thing happens in the cosmos. You have a place for the sun to rise. You have a path for the movement of some stars and planets. You have a place for the sun to set. You have the North Pole, the South Pole. Everything is organized and everything is not undifferentiated. People say everything is one. Yes, if you look from the outside, but when you are inside, everything has its own details and its specific functions. And we need to understand that our material plane, the earth, also has different spaces for different karmic manifestations. Why is the ocean dividing the continents? To make them different, to isolate them and to make the experience in that country totally different from the experience in another country. It's going to be changing in the future with more and more virtual reality going on, but originally that was the project. And India is the room for the spirit inside the material theater. And the more people miss Vedic knowledge, the more India will decay. Of course, it's not a direct consequence. Things are happening at the same time. Material phenomena are complex. There are other reasons that are causing this. India is also more exposed to the cosmic influence of Kali Yuga, and we're going to see it now. But we have a parenthesis to make. In spite of apparent chaos, India conceals, still today, spiritual treasures of immense value that are clearly visible to sincere seekers who cherish ethics more than aesthetics. The beauty of the truthful spiritual knowledge is still beating in the hearts of some sages in India, and that's the aim of our Vedic study group, to make you able to reach and to have contact with them and to benefit yourselves with their beautiful information, with this eternal knowledge that is here, and it's conquering not only my heart but the heart of hundreds of people all over the world. Okay, all major civilizations, especially the ancient ones, took birth on the banks of a river or in a valley, and the proximity of a mountain. Few rivers compared to the Ganges in terms of velocity of stream. I don't even know if there is a river who can beat the Ganges. The most impressive thing in such a wide and big river is the fact that the velocity is huge. It almost seems like it's coming down from the top of the sky. Because how come it is so fast and so strong? If you swim for 5 meters, you can be dragged for hundreds of meters in a minute. Isn't it so? Likewise, no mountain chain rivals the Himalayas in volume and height. And there is something that we're going to analyze that, but before that we're going to look to a specific thing. In 1884, Greenwich in London, crossing London, became the universally accepted prime meridian, the international standard for zero longitude, from where all world's time is calculated. According to the Vedic texts, the city of Ujjain is considered the reference point for the zero meridian. Even today, wherever you were born, when a Vedic horoscope, the original horoscope, is drawn up, it is always based on Ujjain's time. And there is something very interesting. When I arrived at the Himalayas, when you arrive in Nepal, you were forced to set your clock 15 minutes ahead of Delhi time. And both cities are essentially in the same longitude, Delhi and Nepal. But Nepal is 5 hours and 45 minutes ahead of Greenwich, London. Curious, huh? Sometimes I fantasize, this is my idea, that if the meridian zero is passing in India, crossing the Himalayas, even if you by speculation motives or by political motives want to move this meridian to the west, you still have to know where's the 01 going on. So whatever it is, you have to know the specific time of that area so that you can calculate all the timing of mankind and civilization. So, what is a big mountain? Ancient timekeeping devices, which were based on the movement of shadows created by the sun, morphed over time into modern electronic clocks. What more natural clock pointed than the highest mountain? It is not a question of culture, but a geological and geographical fact. The Himalayas are the highest antennas in our material reality. So what does it mean? It's not only the meridian zero because Vedic culture came first. It's meridian zero because the Himalayas are the highest mountain. So this is the pointer of the clock of our world in relation to the sky, in relation to the sun, in relation to the cosmos. You understand? That's why it started in India. Because India was geographically built with this advantage, the advantage of connecting itself with the cosmos. And we have to understand that a mountain works as an antenna. What is an antenna made of? Antennas are made of metals, and they almost always have a triangle form, right? Just like a mountain. So one reason mountains are considered sacred in the Vedic culture is that rainwater provided by their geography supplies life to the flora and to the fauna and to mankind. But the peaks also serve as antennae, connecting man with the cosmos. Man-made antennae often have the triangle shape and the manufactured metallic elements, just like those present in the rocks of the Himalayas, as we are trying to explain. So what is happening? Why is India manifesting Kali Yuga before anyone else? Because the Himalayas are capturing Rahu's transmission in the first place. So India is today probably what mankind, what civilization in the West might get in the period of time in terms of organization and chaos. So that's the reason everything happens first here, because we're capturing all the energies of the cosmos. Who wants to understand more about these energies? Again, please watch the first class, Science and Astrology. So the height and elemental compound of the Himalayas gives an advantage to India by creating a favorable relationship between Earth and the cosmos. They are natural, existential antennae. So we talked already about Ujjain being the city related to the meridian 0. That's why it is known as the city of Kala. And it also represents the communion of Shiva and Parvati that we are going to explain here for the new people. God and his own material energy are represented in this place, and that's why time is counted from Ujjain. But let's go a little bit deeper. We all know that the Ganga River, we named it 2 minutes ago, is known as being miraculous. And $21 million were spent in 2012 by the Indian government to prove it wrong. They wanted to demystify the miraculous qualities of the Ganga. They hired 200 scientists of different scientific organizations, including the Indian National Environment Institute, and surprisingly, all of them proved that the water of the Ganges possesses a positive viral charge that attack bacteria and kill them in a few hours. So what people think is mythology regarding Vedic knowledge can be proved by science if we are sincere enough to make a good research. Of course, today is the age of fake news. How can you decide? We need to be sincere, says Krishna. We need to achieve the position of seers of the truth, to identify and to recompose the original knowledge the way we are trying to do in Eternal Vedic Science Group. So here are many websites talking about that the Ganga possesses a ninja virus that attacks bad bacteria, a non-putrefying property in its waters. That's the way you can research it at home if you want. The non-putrefying properties of the Ganges. It's scientifically validated now Ganga water is holy, antibacterial agents. Polluted Ganga still has healing touch, even polluted, because it's a viral charge. It's a positive virus inside the water. Pollution cannot destroy the virus that attack bad bacteria. There are also PDFs that you can download online, Revelation of Non-Putrefying Property of Ganga Water. Not just sins, Ganga water can end coronavirus too, says this website. And let's close our class with this very amazing point. The Vedas say that the Ganges descends from the infinite and arrives in our material world after first landing on Lord Shiva's head, where he sits on the top of the Himalayas. This is not mythology. The Himalayan peaks pierce and extend for hundreds of meters beyond the highest clouds. Where does the snow on the top of those mountains come from? If the clouds are 850 meters below the peaks of the Himalayas. The Himalayas are 8,850 meters high, and here we can see the atmospheric refraction line at the top of the cloud layer, yet still below the mountain's peaks. This is a picture. Seems like water, right? But that's the end zone for clouds to go. So, ladies and gentlemen, if the clouds are below the peaks of this amazingly huge, massive chain of mountains, Srila Shamdas Maharaj always says that when he visited the Himalayas, he felt so small, so small, so small that he started to understand the infinite. Like the comparison from your body to these mountains are so astounding. It's so astounding that you start to understand proportions inside material reality and the proportion of the infinite. NASA discovered gigantic amount of water in space. NASA has announced, I'm not quoting NASA because I believe in NASA, just because we can have some, like a famous agency talking about water in space, because people would say, how can the Ganges come down from the space if the space is voided and empty? But it's not true. That's what common people believe. The space is full of nebula, minerals, metals, atoms, everything. You can see that when you see the pictures, they're not real. They're made with some Photoshop, but you have an idea that it's not like a void reality, right? So NASA is announcing here the discovery of the largest concentration of water. This water cloud in the form of steam, is not in a liquid form, surrounds the black hole with a quantity of water equal to the amount of water on Earth multiplied by 140 trillion times. So how much water is there in space? Ladies and gentlemen, the Milky Way is not made of milk but water. What are we seeing according to the manuscripts? Between the stars, the cloud, the waterfall, the milk, under quotations, coming down, is the Ganges, crossing the different layers of space-time, crossing the different atmospheres of the universe, crossing the time-space in the form of nebula, gas, and crystals, and snowing down on the top of the Himalayas hills in the form of snow. It is really happening. And I invite those who already have a contact with Vedic knowledge not to doubt the scriptures. What I do is that I get on my knees and I pray and I chant the Mahamantra in order to decode the scriptures instead of thinking that maybe the TV programs are right, but yeah, this is holy, yes. There is not a single mistake inside the Puranas. Not a single mistake inside the Bhagavad Gita. The Ganges is coming down as a majestic waterfall by the mercy of the Supreme Intelligence, crossing all the planets, all the planetary systems inside our universe. And with this, I thank you very much for your patience, for your trust, and for your time. And if you like, please watch our other classes or contact us on Facebook. We are called Eternal Vedic Science Study Group, and we are here to serve you and to serve the eternal knowledge. Thank you very much. vanchakalpatarubhyascha, kripa sindubhya eva cha, patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha.